realidades. Acreditar na energia que vem da cultura é acreditar que as histórias transformam os palcos, os ritmos e os cantos desse país. São nessas histórias que encontramos a alma e a diversidade de um povo. Celebramos essa diversidade, celebramos cada cor, cada voz, cada sorriso e cada emoção. A cultura é reflexo dos nossos sonhos. Investimos nesses sonhos há mais de 60 anos, porque acreditamos que a energia que vem da gente é a energia que impulsiona vidas. Shell, energia que vem da cultura. Onde tem cultura,
Patrícia, desculpa interromper vocês.
um poder criativo que nasce dos palcos, orquestras, das artes, das ruas e dos museus. Na valorização das diversas identidades brasileiras e na preservação de memórias. Onde toca um instrumento, o futuro desperta. Nas trocas de saberes, sonhos e oportunidades concretizam. Os projetos que todo mundo conhece, os que todo mundo precisa conhecer, é valorizando a cultura que crescemos e evoluímos juntos. Instituto Cultural Vale.
Dizer que o Brasil é gigante não é exagero, mas o país é escravo dos falsos assim. É conta por mais de 200 milhões de gigantes. Ouvir você. Gigantes que saem cedo de casa todos os dias. Com força, dedicação, coragem, pelos trilhos e estradas oleotórios. Gigantes que não diminuem diante dos desafios. Compreendendo as distâncias. Procurou o caminho para os sonhos acontecerem. Por isso, só uma gigante, uma CCE, poderia estar ao lado dos brasileiros no desafio de um grande país. CCE, 25 anos. O meu Brasil para gigantes.
Voltamos para a nossa programação.
We start again with our schedule. Do you realize how important that meeting was? This transatlantic meeting where our stories are intertwined or connected because our roots are there and nobody kills the root. Whatever happens, you cannot kill it. So we are very happy to create a space for us to give to use our voices and say that we won't tolerate this structure that separates us, that kills us, and the importance of this happening during the G20 is even more representative. So if you like this panel and you know someone that might be interested in it, all our panels are being broadcasted live through Floop's YouTube and through Futura channel. So send the link because there are no borders that can make us lose such an interesting debate. And let's move on to the next one because I know you're really excited about it. It's essential to incorporate practices, anti-racist practice, and quilombolas and indígenas and communitary practice when you think about school. And beyond it, imagine the future implicates the recognition that Childhood is built by different actors, from school to family, neighbors, and society. Colombo is characterized by collective life within a cultural system with its own identity and should inspire initiatives where dance, sacred land, and nature are central elements in pedagogic projects offered to children from this community. Because for our autonomy and liberty and freedom to be liberating, we require a whole village to educate a child. So let's see how this practice from these lands can be used as a lighthouse for a better future. Our is our political pedagogical project really transforming? How do we think children as capable subjects? To discuss these issues, we invite Wanda Machado, the creator of this pedagogical project, together with Balbino Cabral in 1981, and the political pedagogue project in school Eugênia dos Santos, recognized as a reference by the Ministry of Education. And together with her, we received the coordinator of the Indigenous Network, Indigenous Women Network, Banibo Socorro. Together, she also promotes other projects for the freedom of these populations. And trying also to make these indigenous populations more robust and deep and feminine. And to contribute, we also have Dandara Suburbana, PhD in sociologist, and founder of a project that dialogues with racism, ancestry, Black literature, and spirituality from Black background. Moderating Maria Eduarda Nascimento, who is a journalist from the Federal University of Rio and acts with and works with communication in this Institute of Black Studies and also as a journalist in TV. Please, applauses to her. Come, come, this is for you, girls. It's a pleasure to have you here in our stage. You have sat down. Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon. How are you? You know, it's Saturday, it's cold and rainy, and I'd like to start thanking again Floop and say that this edition is historic. We had a beautiful week here in Circo Voador, so I'd like to congratulate the whole staff, all the women behind this beautiful work, and the presence of all of you, Dandara, Socorro, Vanda Machado, bless Dandara. And I want to say that it's important to be here and talk about Beatriz and talk about children, about our future. And Beatriz was also addressing these issues. Not to make it long, let's start with an audio description. I'm going to ask you all, our guests, to do the same. Well, I'm a Black woman with a brown skin. I have my hair gathered in very small beards and it's loose behind. It's very black. I have a white t-shirt with red motifs, written a shoe with a white skirt, a very long one. And I'd like to start to say that this panel would count only with Giovanna Silva, but she couldn't be with us due to health issues. But then we invited another guest, and the data would have been a mediator, and we have to redesign the panel. Giovanna would have been very important also. Let's start with an inspired question. I'd like you to also introduce yourselves and be comfortable to respond. You know, there is a Witan, relatively well known, Witan about Wibeges. I'm gonna leave this concept to our older to talk about which are these Ibejes, that set Iku apart, deceived him, and killed him. Ibejes are children, the Shah's children of the Shah, and this tale says that they were set apart and they could prevent death through music, through the drum, using the drum. So how do you understand the way your work can, remove death from our people, prevent our people to die through this, magic dance, because magic is knowledge from intuition, this playful side, enchantment. So let's start with Professor Wanda Machado, and then we go around like from there to go back and forth. I was greeting our ancestral mothers from Afujá, where I come from, and I'm daughter Eniaide. It's a habit for us to greet our ancestors before we speak. And it's a habit also to ask for the blessings of our older ones. And now I ask the blessings of my older brother, Marco Antônio de Xangô. Please bless me. You spoke about a myth. And good afternoon to all of you who are here. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's the second time. So happy and with how you welcome here in Floop, in Rio. How to get death away from our children, how to ward off, how to move away. When people say that we have 20, 30 children dying now, in this moment, and I ask, which are our attitudes? What are we actually doing and thinking about doing to free these children and youngs from death? And I ask your permission to tell another Witan. It's not a de Witan, it's a truth. Narciso told me, and at that time he was vice ministry of Angola, and he told me about what happens to the Kajimba people when a woman becomes pregnant. When she is pregnant in this place, it's a great joy for her, for all the families, that she's pregnant. The whole community needs to know that she's pregnant, even if she doesn't have, the womb, the belly showing up. And she has this this bell in her hip, and whenever she passes by, people treat her respectfully because they are in front of another life that is being generated that will arrive. If she goes up in a bus, nobody turns their head because the bell shakes and everybody sees her. and someone stands up for her to sit down, and it's a great joy. And it gives, signs of this child that will come and its life. And the husband plants a small tree in a vase. As time passes by, he will put, wood around the house, and then little by little adding wood because the pregnancy is moving on, and all the neighborhood, all the community will be aware that a children will be born there, and they start to the pile of wood starts to grow around the house until people, realize the child is about to be born. And when the child is born, all the community already knows. The mother goes to the room, father goes to the room, and the small tree also. And the women are close, all of them praying for this delivery. And all the community is, outside waiting the delivery of this woman until the children is born. And when it happens, a father, with a very important gesture, takes the plant to the window and sings a song. Since I don't know what he sang, I know what I know. I sing what I know. That could be, for instance, so I think someone knows this song. And then something happens. A great party happens because the father takes out the child and shows to the whole community, my son is born. Our son is born. The son of this community is born. And when he told me that, I thought about something that happened in my family. My mother, when she was pregnant of the last kid, my youngest daughter, something very sad happened. Someone entered the backyard and took all the chicken from this yard. And my mother was giving birth. And at that time, the woman would take 15 days eating this dish made of chicken. So what to do now if there are no chickens? The neighbors would start to come a chicken, to bring a chicken and give it to them. And again, she was full of chicken, and this backyard was already full with the chicken and with a lot of food, because the food was not only for the mother, but for everyone in the house. And I started to think about the relation between a population in Africa and my mother, who was in São Felipe in the Recôncavo of Bahia, going through a very similar moment. And we start to think, where did we learn this? Where did these people learn this? And it's important to think that these people, from my land, when they came in their ship, they didn't, they had in their skin, between skin and flesh, this knowledge of what community is, of what it is to be together and build together, and what it is to create a child, to raise a child. May I go on, or would you like me to stop? I cannot tell you to stop, but please move on. Conclude your thoughts. So, when I was teaching Catholic religion, I wanted to create a political project that would encompass black children. And without knowing what to do, I met one day Mãe Dela. As incredible as it may seem, I met her in New York. We talked to each other, and she accepted me as a researcher, and a fluent researcher from the Federal University. And the first thing I will summarize it. The first thing I did was to think who I'm going to work with. What's this community? I was a catechist. I was teaching religion. Who are these community? How do they live? How do they communicate? And I saw that the sense of community already existed, but it was like people were playing, dancing, and doing things that I'd never seen. And I was facing a very hard problem, severe one, how to embrace these children so that I could create a political pedagogic project that would be a path of joy. It was called Ireayo, but how do I create it? If teachers, when they're passing by to enter school, they were, closing their eyes not to see the Shango's house that was there nearby. So I was married with a man that was film writer, artist, and we thought, let's do it in a different way. And I did it. He brought his students from the theater school, and I started to observe and dramatize everything in front of the teachers and the community. The community loved it because they, be there in front of the the group with their with their being themselves, laughing, communicating, and teachers would come too, even if they were, disrespectful, they were ignorant of this in the community. There was no relation. So from that moment on, this book came up, Prosa de Nagô. And in this book, basically, you find the embracing that the community did with us, how they embraced, how the teachers accepted this project, and the continuity. I'm going to speak about it later on. Let's move on with the same perspective, Socorro. Your work in Minas Gerais as an artisan also, how did this move away death from us and our children? Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank Tupã, our God, and to Flu for the invitation, and Jefferson Barbosa, who contacted me for this event, and also ask permission to my ancestors, to Tupã, whom I referred to, and to those women who had already been fighting within the indigenous movement in the Amazon at the national level, and speak about our matriarchy who passed, Deolina Desan from Rio Negro, and about Celina Sariri. Two women are references from the indigenous movements from the state of Amazon, who were the first women in this movement to give visibility to us, indigenous women, a little bit of our story inside a movement. Since I have to introduce myself. I'm Socorro, indigenous. I belong to the Rio Negro territory. I was born in Santa Isabel do Rio Negro. My indigenous name is Yerparo. I belong to two people. I am from the Tucano population and Banila population. That's why I am Socorro Banila. And if we had to talk about how to save our children, first of all, to save our children, we have to save their mothers. Because nowadays, the network to which I belong, we face the situation women, just as the women suffer violence, our women, and also Beatriz Nascimento was a victim. We women are still victims of a violence, and this has been ongoing. And if we have to talk about children, the first phase of a child, we have to talk about these mothers, indigenous or not, so that these children will be part of this world and also be part of this fight, because even in the womb, this child fights. It is there to fight and to come to this world inside her mother's body, because this mother, from our perspective, this woman suffers even if she's not pregnant. And within pregnancy, how this child can be protected. When she's in the womb, she is protected, but as she develops and grows, she doesn't. She's not protected because she's been suffering since the womb. And now we talk about our first childhood anti-racist to protect these children, and we are gonna talk from the standpoint of the our indigenous education of the indigenous population, because we have laws about education, 10 say 60 35. But first of all, we have to talk about our ancestor education, because inside the territories it remains. But within the non-indigenous territories, cities, urban certain centers, peripheries, outskirts, it has been continuously erased by the colonizer, because the education they offered us, it is colonialist. It is not our education. We don't learn at school. It's not taught to our children. The education that refers to our culture, indigenous, quilombeiros, ribeirinhos. So when we're going to talk about protecting the children, we have these two perspectives. This network of that works with indigenous women in Amazonas state. And if we're gonna, elaborate on this fight nowadays about survival and living, we have to mention politics, our own state. I'm talking about Amazonas reality, the biggest state for in terms of indigenous population. But even so, it's not taken into account these people's culture, state, and residences are not taken into account, and the society does not, pay attention to us or help us or support us. So when we're talking about protecting these children, first we have to talk about give us, attention, information, formation, training for these mothers, because the support to these mothers will will allow these children to survive within society, a society that massacres us, that makes us invisible, and laws are created without taking into account our reality. We have ECHO, we have AT, so many laws that are not implemented effectively, taking into account our indigenous territories. If a child is in her territory, and another thing is a child in other territories, urban cities, outskirts, where other entities that should support kids are marginalizing them and marginalizing their mothers, and several times taking them out of this maternal situation and not taking to them their ancestry. This is just a little bit. And let's discuss on how to protect these children. Thank you, Socorro. Let's move on with Dandara. Guys, I asked for the blessing to my older in this round table, to my younger, to all people who Yukuyu, Kolafet, Muntumba. I greet my ancestry that allows us to be here. And we are here because of this ancestry, because of this black magic that makes us be here alive, regardless of all the violence. So great Beatriz Nascimento, our big ancestor that we celebrate here in this flip this year. Thinking about the Atlantics, Audre Lorde, who was yesterday at the release of her book. It was translated into Portuguese. Great all that are by our side. And I would like to start with a poem. I was looking, searching for all that was said. So first, say about my situation here. It's not simple, I'm here with two women and two old women that I admire that work. I admire their trajectory. I'm here to learn more than anything else, and they have already provoked me with their speeches.
Eu não ando só, eu nunca estive sozinha. Meu corpo abriga várias povoações, desde o sangue nordestino por parte de mãe, até o fervor do congado mineiro por parte de pai. Eu sou célula, eu sou mitose dividida. Não é assim que vocês chamam na biologia? O individual me desequilibra. Por que sinais a mais é necessário para entender que é o coletivo que se produz a vida? A felicidade escorre na ladeira numa garrafa de PET. A capacidade de equilibrar o caos com a boca cheia de confete. Sua maldade que se cure, porque eu vou passar com a minha inocência. Aos mais novos, eu também peço a bênção.
Mais bonito. Herê é ser livre dentro de espaço perseguido e subalternizado, e colorir com língua e muita baba. É sentir o mundo de maneira aguçada, lambendo cada momento. Herê é entidade, é o espaço, é o tempo. Ser herê é resistência. Celebre, converse, cure, ame, celebre a sua essência. A arte de significar a existência no canto de um sabiá. Porque, como diz Mulungu, brincadeira é coisa séria. Esse poema é da Isa Reis, que é uma mineira.
This is a poem from Isa Reis from Minas. Minas has produced a lot of good writers that we have in Earth, and the book is called Caminho de Volta para Casa. Way to Come Back Home. Applauses to Isa. Because we are never alone, we bring others with us. And we have more than 1,000 women here, black women, indigenous women, ancestors. How do Kua moves away death? And it's a can that I love because Ibejis are dancing to deceive Eku, which is the death. And they dance, and they are two Ibejis. Ibejis is plural, they are two, and dance to deceive death. And they all turn, with their drum, and death, when it hears the sound coming from that drum, it is so irresistible that it cannot stop dancing. It cannot stop to dance, and it starts to get tired. And children make Iko tired with their drum and sound. And how? Since they are two, they take turns. And death doesn't notice because they are twins and they do not stop playing. And it's so beautiful because it has so many, meanings as values, as Zoiuda Trindade would say, our ancestor. These are civilizatory values, Afro-Indigenous, Afro-Brazilians, cooperation, community, uh, to be playful, music, corporate, all of this moves away Eku, death from the village until Eku needs to, negotiate with IBGs because she could not handle anymore to be dancing all the time. And then through negotiation, it moves away, goes away, or at least prevents early death. So it's an attempt that is full of meanings for us. I was listening, thinking about many things. First of all, sorry, I didn't do my audio description. Let's go on. I am a black woman with clear skin. I have dreads, artificial dreads in my hair, long ones under the shoulders, and I am using a colorful dress with African fabric in blue, black, and yellow. I'm fat, I'm tall, and I'm using a necklace and earring, a golden necklace and golden earrings, like in the form of Africa, And I was thinking a lot of things about Africa and childhood and remembering other people that I like, such as Renato Nogueira, philosopher, professor. Renato has a project for children who's called Nani Nilo, who was also created together with another black man, Sandro Lopes, very important. So I greet also Sandro Lopes. And Renato was telling that when he arrived in Angola and he started to create this workshop that he would do usually with children, he asked them to draw nature. And he said that in Brazil, when children draw nature, they usually draw an apple, a tree, a plant, And when he arrived in Angola, he was surprised because children were drawing their hands. That that thing that we write our hands with the pencil. They were drawing with the pencil because I think it's nature. What's nature? We disassociate nature and human. So like nature is something external. We speak about it in third person, not as if it encompassed our own existence. So other societies, other cosmic perceptions of the world help us to understand this differently about what we are and nature is. And another friend, Mari Lucy, who is a social assistant, and for several years worked in a kindergarten in a favela in the north zone of Rio, Tijuca. And one day, this kindergarten, and I remembered it because many people went to CCBB, the museum, and one day, this kindergarten, they took the children to a CCBB exposition, Cultural Center Rio do Brasil. If you're not from Rio, it's here nearby. And this exhibition had an installation with apple. It was called Eden, and they had apples there. And Maria Lucia was telling the story, saying that she arrived there with children between 3 and 4 years old, like kindergarten. They started to get apples and ate apples. And CCBB went crazy. The staff of the exhibition started to shout with the social assistants, teachers, and she was laughing a lot about it because it's something really obvious. It's an apple, It's really the fruit, the true apple. It was a basket full of apples in a tree, There was a lot of apples, and the first thing they thought was, let's eat the apples. And then the institution could not handle it, And she starts to tell it, she starts to laugh and this artist got to know it and loved it because no one ever ate that apple. They were also, the apple was getting, banned because this idea of education, of art, of museum, it's static, no movement. And Leda Maria Martins talks about it very well. We have memory archives that are static. And the museum is to be there, You stop it. The less you move, you speak, it better. And the kids should be, silent, quiet. And you give all the guidelines to children. But other people have dynamic archives of memory. If you think about the terreiro, it is this. It's a memory archive. It's dynamic. You dance, you move your body. We have books, bibliotheques, and municipal state archives, and it's all static. Conceição was telling about it, Conceição Evaristo, that books have to move, because if the books doesn't move, if people do not read, it's just an object that's there, static. This is another perspective. And I also remembered Helena Teodoro, the professor, and she was talking about this perspective of education of people, Afro-Brazilian people, not from like an abstract concept. You don't have it. You don't have this concept, and then maybe you try to see how it applies to reality. First, you experiment, you live, you have this experience with your body, and then you narrate it, and then you create the concept. This is another starting point that is very different from ours in the Western side. And that's what these women did in this table, right? In this panel. It's not a change regarding what we say, but methodology. They were telling stories, So first you tell the story, which means you make people experiment situations. When you tell stories, that's what you do. You give them the opportunity, and then you theorize or not this. And then we, do differently. We start with the abstract because you don't know how it is. What's the square? No. How do you create something that is squared, something else? Do it with your body. We learned it in math as a theory, but what does that mean? Something squared. And this brings us perspective. And this Western society, colonized culture, whatever name we give to it, it has this perspective of criminalization, criminalizing nature, childhood, children, and feminine. All of this is the face of the same, only face of a coin. You demonize and criminalize what you cannot control. One is not foreseeable. It's not given. So the control society, a controlling society, a child wakes up and it becomes a cat, a dog, wants to be a cat or a dog. We are really well formatted. We were educated. A child wakes up and decides to, to be a cat, a snake, a dog. So you don't have this control that, starts to happen with us as we are educated. And when Socorro says this, is because the university widens us. But we learn it in the kindergarten. You learn that angels are blonde with curly hair, and devil, its hair grows to the top and it's black. We learn this when we are kids. And so we are whitened since we are kids, not in university, even if there we have all these issues, So to move away cool and deaf from us through other projects, other perspectives regarding education, we need to walk in this way, a very long way, but many things have been done in bringing other perspectives. Something important also just to mention here is that we say that we need a whole village to raise a child, but we have 11 million solo mothers, single mothers in the world. So what do we mean with this title? No? Obviously, whenever we have this index, these alarming numbers, it bothers me because they say, no, million mothers that do not have fathers, like our families had to be composed by heterosexual relations between men and women, just as if our support network had to be exclusively this place of the fathering, for fathering. And when we mention, we'd say a village, whole village, we mean that this network of women are the women. other black women, the grandmother, the aunt, the sister, the neighbor, from this perspective of extensive family that are coupled with other issues. Socorro provoked us, just to conclude, about the loss. We have loss. We have ECA 10645. We have so many others. We have a constitution, but how these laws are changed. And even if they are followed correctly, when they are, acting on different situations that are not the standard ones, you have to take care when they are applied, in different situations. So they told about the indigenous territories, but we have it here in our daily racism. We have mothers losing the right to be with their children because they were accused of torture because these children were initiated in candomblé. And this is a reality. And sometimes when you change ECHO, when you have psychologists and other professionals analyzing these situations, what is the reading that they do? How do they read it? It's the same thing when we have mothers that lose the right to keep their children in favelas and outskirts. What is to alienate a child? What it is to abandon a child? Some professionals say that you're not paying someone to, supervise or to take care, or if you don't leave the child with parents, with relatives. But sometimes the neighbor is the one who takes care of your child when you go to work. Sometimes you lock the child inside your house because you don't have someone to take care of your child and you have to go to work. So these contexts and this individuality and these specific situations have to be taken into account when we think about children and how we move away death, not only the physical death, but the symbolic one, the way you forget things. And there are many ways to erase these children and these women and these women.
Minutos. Okay, we have 10 minutes. So I wanted to conclude that you could answer on the perspective of your own existences, own perspectives and vision of the world. Afro-Indigenous, how do you perceive childhood? In the knowledge that we produce, ECA was mentioned, the Statute of Children and Adolescents, that preserved their rights. But we live in a society that doesn't respect child as a subject, as an individual, autonomous, that think and that produces. So I'd like you to talk a little more about it. Like Dandara was saying, okay, be quiet, don't move, don't think, don't speak. So in these perspectives of your territories, what is childhood? What is infancy in your perspective? The last thing that was stated brought the issue of the legislations. Oh, Wanda, sorry. We still have 30 minutes. I was ready to give up, just saying, hello, okay, thank you, bye-bye. Sorry, but we still have 30 minutes. This is a great problem we have. Who is going to do what? Because we are good on talking, but sometimes I think that about something that I read in a book. That it was called the People's Guidebook. And this book ended with a text that was mentioning the Rats Assembly. Oh, there's no one of my generation. So I'm going to tell you this story. The rats organized an assembly because the cat was very strong and was killing all of them. So they thought, how are we going to do? One said, I have a solution. We are going to guard, vigilate this cat, and we are going to put something on its tail that when he moves, we are going to know. So, in this assembly, one asked, and who is going to put this thing on the tail of the cat? So, we have to say what to do, how we're going to do, and who is going to do. The legislation, the laws are made. I think that there are so many laws here in Brazil, so many. But when it's necessary, who is going to assure this law is followed? So we still don't know how to do what is necessary for reinforcing the law. Because the lack of consciousness, the lack of knowledge, historical knowledge, lead us to believe in racism, and we believe in racism. Someone looked at me and said, "You are ugly, maybe you are stupid," and we believe in these things because of the lack of historical knowledge. A while ago, a black girl, very young, I found her crying, and I asked, and she said, and I asked her, "Where did you come from?" And she said, "I don't know, I'm from Itaparica." So, you and I, we are the last black people to arrive in Brazil because we are from Yoruba origin, and I started telling this story. And she was crying while I was telling her story. I told her, "I know you are Daniel de Paula," which is a last name very important in the Itaparica Island. They come from the reigns, different kingdoms in the region, Yoruba region in Africa. But what I wanted is that she could develop an awareness of her own stories. And I told her, "Your ancestors knew everything about iron. There was a time in which iron was a lot more important than technology today. And this knowledge came from the African continent. And you are from a family of sons of Ogun, so you come from a very wise family. And maybe you also come from a family of kings and queens." And I started talking to her everything that I could think about the history. And another thing that really impacts us is political awareness. Why do you think black people are more poor? Why are you the first person to go to university in your family? So we cannot talk, we cannot think our situation without taking into consideration where are the black ones, where are the whites, where do the black people live, where do the whites live. But the issue is how are we going to make the change? We know women, especially black women, is in the basis of the pyramid. And we know that because we are in the basis of the pyramid, society only changes if we, especially black women, leave these places. And how are we going to leave this place? Surely, we need to be, in fact, a black community. We need to change this history. But to move this history, we need to start with children. We
criado num terreiro de candomblé, no Ilha-Xalpó, Funjá. E foi criado antes.
The pedagogical project was created before the creation of the law in our terreiro. But the intention of this project, of this political pedagogical, was to make these people understand that each person has a way of thinking the world. We don't find two people that think the same. So for this,
Sociedade. Cada de nós tem uma possibilidade.
Each of us has a possibility, and each of us has a way to put this possibility, to make this possibility work, possible. So one of the stories that I tell the parents, they never looked at me again dressed in white and said, nevermore I was taken as a person to be reprehended. Because I said that in the world there is a great mirror covering everything. Was the mirror of divinity. Every creator to do something looked up and said, is it right or not? Because the mirror of the truth was there. But there was a place where there was a girl that she was always working, making flour. And she was there working, and the mother used to say, be careful, you can hurt yourself doing this. And then this is such a heavy instrument, and if it escapes from your hand and it goes and hits the mirror, you're going to break the mirror of truth. But she continued stepping, and the instrument hit the mirror, and there were a lot of pieces of mirror spread all over. And I said, okay, now we don't have anymore the mirror of the truth. So she ran to meet the Creator and to explain, well, this happened, well, how are we going to do from now on? The Creator will be so angry with me. But when she got there, the Creator was sitting down under a tree there, taking fresh air. And she arrived and he said, Maura, why are you so desperate? Oh my God, I broke the truth, the mirror of the truth. There's no mirror of the truth. Where is the truth? Oh, what is right? What is wrong? And after this whole drama, the Creator said, Maura, it's not like this. There was the mirror of the truth, but from now on, it's right, because there isn't any more a single truth. From now on, Maura, there are many truths. Each one that finds a piece of mirror will find a piece of mirror that shows only the place where he is, only what he thinks. Each one will have the right to think whatever they want to think. But it's necessary also, Maura, to respect the way of thinking of the other. And the school in the terreiro had more Protestants than anywhere else. The intention was to give value to the truth of each one. Truly, we have this problem, and it's very serious, because if the teacher is evangelical Protestant, we won't have education regarding ethno-racial relationships. And we have to be very careful to talk about this way of living without taking the religion, Afro Afro-Brazilian religion to the schools. It's not necessary to bring the Afro-Brazilian religion to the schools. It's not necessary to talk about Orixá in the schools. We can talk about it. But if you go to the mythology, to the African tales and stories that can tell, that can talk about important issues, and one of them is what is community? How to live in community? How these experiences can help us, can aggregate us. I gathered many of these tales, I think 50 of them, and I put in my book. I put them in my book, taking the opportunity to publicize my book. Mythical tales, Afro-Brazilian mythical tales. And these mythical tales that I'm telling, and the potentialities of the human being. The important is that we have knowledge of our history and knowledge and perception that the religion tells us a lot of things, but we not necessarily have to follow them. Up to which point religion is connected to our knowledge. When the Bentes story was told, what does it mean? To defy death is to work the education of the ethno-racial relations. Is that the black children thinking, I am strong, I have an origin, to raise strong children than to fix adults that are already in the wrong place. So this myth tells us about the possibility we have to defy, to deviate from what is not good for our children. And what is not good for our children? What's the possibility they have to be in the world in a conscious way of their life conditions? How are we going to raise these subjects? Having them thinking about their rights of life, rights of study, food, quotes. Everything we know it's possible for this child or teenager, black teenager, to be raised as a strong individual, conscious of the best way he can be in the world. This is possible. But we have to create other ways of thinking history, our history, because it's very difficult for us. We were raised in a way that even playing can take us to the garbage. My mother was white, and my father was a black man, and he was my hero up to now. He died when I was 7 years old. I saw many times him saying, Idalina, a woman of a dirty womb. I am a daughter of my white mother and of the dirtiness of my father. So it's necessary that we tell other story, history, education of the ethno-racial relations, to think again, how are we going to restart from zero? How to teach, experience the history of black men and women in Brazil. How it was created so much richness. How are we still living far away in the more difficult places? You have to say that you, the first university student from your family, it's because they were forbidden by law to go to a school. So it's because of this that you today, that has 30, 40 years, is the first person in the university. I chose the mythical tales because the ones that are from African religions, Afro religions, has the conscience that we don't have destiny. Is there destiny? For me, there is a path. Because I can negotiate with my way of being in the world. Or I create possibilities, or what I do is all right. Socorro.
Socorro, a infância na sua perspectiva.
Socorro, infancy, in your perspective. I'm going to base my discourse on possibilities. And I like to interact with the audience. I make the question, I suggest the reflection. What paths and possibilities do you think for an infancy with security, integrity, and possibility? Because to think of this child, as Vânia said, we have to reset everything and start all over again. Because you that are here taking part, listening, it starts from us. We have to restart this again and again. And we come to the issue of the impact in the life of this child. Because if we start to do this, many projects, many indigenous and non-indigenous persons will work in the perspective of the first childhood. Because from this perspective, we can have a future, we can have youngsters that can be with more safe possibilities. As if it was said here, since it was said here, if today at 45, 50, we had the opportunity of going to university, it's because we didn't have this possibility back there. That's my experience. I'm the only one in my family that has a graduation, superior graduation, and that is taking a master, because there wasn't this possibility to my elders. And today I pass this to my children. We talk about this first infancy and how important it is to keep this vision of safety, integrity, rights. Because it's easy for me to be speaking here for you, but my peers, the women that are in the territories, children, they are there without any defense, vulnerable, being swallowed by the monsters of colonization. Even if some changes arrive, they still arrive through the colonizing system. And when I talked before about formation and information, if you get to a indigenous community and you talk about first infancy and anti-racist, our women don't even know what it means. They don't know. That's why it's so important to be here talking about it and how important it is the role of each of us. What's my role in this society? What's my world vision, world view? What do I think and what do I want for these children. I'm going to have grandchildren. But what can I leave to these children in terms of safety, safetyness? You, me, you, and all of us. I heard sweetly yesterday we talk about ALDEIA. But the sense of ALDEIA, for me, is that inside a community, we experience what today we call well-living. Well-living well in a community because we share in the indigenous villages. And outside, we don't have this. In the big cities, in the peripheral areas, we don't see this. So how can we work this? Protecting our children. Bringing two women in the perspective, through this family perspective, and also men think about the protection of these children, not losing the culture, bring ancestrality to the table, because we cannot forget this. And now we have the perspective of the university, that we really say in the university swallows us. Because today I study anthropology, and today I say that our empirical knowledge is worth a lot more. But unfortunately, we have to use as reference what the previous anthropologists wrote. But now we know what we live, we know how we live. Usually I play with this, I joke with this anthropologist. I say, unfortunately, you were mistaken, because the indigenous people never tell 100% all its history, all its knowledge. Many people think, understand, and write about what they imagine our people lived, experienced, or learned. So today, to talk about children, first of all, is to talk about women, life, physical protection, mental protection, so as to have these children in a healthy environment, healthy school. To have the indigenous children not being swallowed by discrimination. To talk about racism, yes, because we suffer that. We didn't have this perspective before, but yes, we suffer racism. We have a great number of youngsters committing suicide in the universities that leave their territories and is going to a school, an academic environment, and they can't put up with it because of the language, because of the food, because of all the environment. So to think about children, to think about this, protection, security, safeness, always, and make us reflect all the time. As I told to the representative of the Ministry of Health, that us, the society, the government, should look at our children and protect our children, because they are being violated inside the territory, outside the territories, and the same thing, our women. So to talk about protection is to talk about struggle, formation, information, and as Sueli said yesterday, or we are indigenous or we're not indigenous, or we are black or we're not black, or we are quilombola or we are not, or we are ribeirinhos or we are not. Because this is my reality of the state of Amazon, the Amazon to which I belong. They are distinct realities, and that they should know our territory, indigenous, black, quilombola, to be here in this struggle, to face racism, and to have a first infancy with dignity and without violence, and really to let us and them live.
Tudo bem agora?
Okay. So now we have 10 minutes, but please. I was really touched by our indigenous sister. And these are two words. I've been several times in Bahia, in Jaqueira, and many places where you find indigenous population. And we have in the society a very crazy idea of what indigenous can be, and we are embarrassed when deep things happen. I was in the community of Babao once, and he was arrested. And the community was desperate about things that they were saying about him. His mother, a young lady. And in the midst of this conversation, I was so attentive to what I was seeing there. At a certain time, she said, I will do this for under the condition of 5 sacks of flour per week. So many things being said about this community, and this woman wants to just plant mandioca and make flour. And about the young population in the community, the meeting was about women and the man, the young men. They were preparing a cake for Mother's Day, huge, to offer us in the afternoon, late afternoon. And they were so happy, so affection, they showed so much affection in the way they were hugging us. And when we were going to bed, they would go to sleep wherever they want. They would choose the house they wanted to go. So I went to a house. There was a child crying a lot desperately. I said, oh my God. No, I cannot exit because, it's going to look bad. So I'm going to stay here. And the child was crying a lot. And everyone silent, the mother too. And then an old woman said, Celia, where is the umbilicals of this boy? And then she got it and gave to this old lady. The lady put it in the water, and then after a while, the child drank that water, and the child slept so much that we thought he was dead. I went there to woke him up, and then he opened his eyes. So this knowledge, this affection, the way you are embraced, the way I was embraced and welcomed, and all the working group, all the staff that was there. This left me, with such a tension, and it made me feel, excited because I saw so many things that newspapers were saying about Babao and what was actually going on. Women that were struggling, were fighting to work and take the kids to the doctor because there was a list. Any person could be visited, but there was a quote for indigenous. Can you imagine that? You can only 5. Let's see. Let's just down a number. Let's say 5. There was a specific amount of indigenous people that could have a visit. So this different way we were treated. Our brothers and sisters were. This is painful. Indigenous give an example like us. And there is a story that I tell children because I always want to tell them about the possibility of being together and being potentially equal. So I tell them that when our ancestors arrived here, and sometimes they had bounds of crisis. So they were stopped, standing, and they didn't do anything. They didn't have any, willing to do things. They were paralyzed. That's what we call today depression. It was like depression crisis, you know. They were completely there, stopped, and in the midst of this, you know, paralyzation, another one decided to sit down in a place and started to tell random stories about about his ancestors. And another one sat down together and started to do the same important things that his ancestors had done. And then others followed. This sat down and started to narrate these important accomplishments of their ancestors. And sometime after they sat down, they narrated, they started to sing important accomplishments of their ancestors. But sadness was still there, you know, taking over. But they moved on. They continued to, you know, do this exercise. Sit down together and narrating important accomplishments of their ancestors. And after some time, they started to narrate, sing, and dance the important accomplishments of their ancestors. And it seems to me that this is the beginning of this gathering of our indigenous people that get together to sing something that is important for their ancestry, or for us, people from Afro descendants that get together to sing. Well, if these people are Yoruba, they for sure can start to sing. And inviting us to get together, you know, to aggregate. And after that, others will come, join, and start to sing. Like singing important accomplishments of Father Shago, Father Aira. Or closer could be someone who will sing. And so on. And one started to learn the song of the other, and the other started to learn the song of the other. And so they created this circle where everyone are potentially the same, potentially equal. It weren't us or our ancestors who created this way of living with this pyramid model and black women in the basis. This was not created by our ancestors. They created, yes, the possibility of us being together and close to each other and learning to live the life of the other. Because it's really interesting when we can think that today Oyo is very close to Oshobo, who is close to Eshefe, but at that time everything was very far and they were fighting. But this circle of people without any special power but with equal potentialities makes so that we can find ourselves here and one can bless the other with a lot of happiness. Thank you. Thank you, Aya. And so on. We conclude our time. We are almost over. I'd like you to conclude. Nandara will conclude the panel. I'm going to be brief now. I was listening, and the word that power has, words have a lot of power. We're in a very fake news community, so words are important. And we have a lot of stories to tell. When we tell a story, the maximum that we do is to put ourselves in it. We always do it when we tell a story. And I think we have a lot of stories to tell. Some others to remember, to relive, that they were told, but we, wake up and remember. As societies descending from Africa, which is a whole country, a whole continent, as we talk about indigenous populations, these are huge universes of how these societies have a lot to teach us in a very dignified way, more dignified ways to live. So I wish we can, look to these stories and get ways and find ways to exist in a more dignified way. We have a lot of have a limited imaginary of our conditions that are limited. So we have to search other ways to defend life, so that we are not engaged in so much death and extermination. And by thinking about it, I remember our proposals when we talk about restart, reset. We're talking about a time that is not linear, it's a spiral. So past, present, and future are part of a spiral. A crossroads, the circle, the village, the gira. This time that circulates is cyclic, and I think this brings to us other perspectives. When I create the word terapia, tare, I was thinking about the possibility of how can our literature in our terreiro, which is huge, could help us have other imaginaries of what we are and look for other possibilities and answers, and we're acting in the world with more intellectual confidence, strength, courage, and that we may do it daily. And also thinking that we need public policies, that we have duties in this state, we have collective issues that we need to demand from these authorities, dialogue, and also our daily lives that is intertwined and can help us create possibilities for have a world in which enchantment, joy, and pleasure are part of our realities beyond the pain. Thank you, Dandara. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being with us. She asked if someone has a has a birthday today. No, not today. Maybe yesterday. We need to conclude. I'm sorry because of the rest of the program. Thank you, guys. Please stay connected. We still have a lot to do.